Hey everybody, Dunskill here. Hope you're having a good day. In this quick video, we're going to look at my ginormous collection of 5 pedal boards. So you might be asking yourself by Crom's beard, why would anybody need 5 pedal boards? We'll go through each of the boards, we'll look at the signal chain, and what their main purpose is for. And at the end, I'll show some B footage of using the boards in practice. By the way, all of these boards have been put together by 32 Pedalboards. That's my pal Jamie, so check out his website, 32pedalboards.com. This board here is a work in progress. We'll get to that later. We're going to start with pedal board number 1. I call this pedal board Big Tex. It does everything for me and gives me a lot of options. The layout is a little bit confusing. For Big Tex, my signal chain starts with my guitar input here. Output is at the end, and this here is an audition loop, which I'll get to later. The guitar signal then comes down and hits the wah pedal. It's a compressor, fuzz, distortion, tumnus, and Timmy. Then it actually bounces back up to this EQ. Then it goes through a modulation chain, which is these two guys, into delay, into reverb, again into reverb delay. Then it hits this JHS Prestige, which is a boost buffer, and goes out. The audition loop happens just after the distortion phase. So you might notice no tuner here on the board. There's a tuner built into the EQ2 as well as into the H9. And this is kind of my do everything board, my main board. Everything from recording to playing shows and messing around at home. You'll notice a little bit of redundancy in things like reverbs and modulation. That's because I like to experiment with sounds and have shaping in there. This guy down here you might have noticed is a Disaster Area DMC Micro Pro for MIDI. I am running MIDI on this board. That's to control the MIDI enabled devices here. 4 of them on MIDI. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I use it to control patches and switch presets, especially on the synesthesia, because it's such a pain to do it. There's my MIDI box interface. So yeah, that's Big Tex in a minute. Really does a huge and versatile job on a lot and covers a lot of ground for me. Next we have this board here. It's called Little Dude. These are just nicknames. Actually, not nicknames, code names. My signal comes in here to the Jackson Audio Bloom, which has 3 functions. It's a compressor, EQ, and a boost. I hit the Cluster Fuzz Junior, Origin Effects RD Compact Hot Rod for more distortion, Jackson Audio Asabi. This has, again, a couple different functions. There's a tube screamer type circuit on this side, and a heavy distortion circuit on this side. Again, Boss MD200 for my modulation set, modulation number 1, Eventide H9, a repeat from Big Tex. That's my second modulation. I use the Source Audio Collider for reverb and delay, and then an EP booster at the end. No MIDI on this board. Guitar goes in here and comes out here. Little Dude is really just a scaled down version of Big Tex and does a lot of the same things, just with a smaller footprint, and I like that it's just a single tier. So both Big Tex and Little Dude are very similar. They run in stereo and they're kind of do everything boards. My other 3 boards are very more specialized, and we'll look at those next. Now this board I use exclusively at home for recording, and what it is a collection of my favorite dirt pedals, and with a little bit of modulation, reverb, and compression thrown in there. Also a tuner up in this case. Signal chain is very straightforward. I'm basically going into a tuner, compressor, fuzz, Loud and Proud, which is distortion and fuzz, the Harlot here, up to the Automaton, down to the Protein, back up to the Diesel, to the Heavy, to the Visitor for modulation, up to the Tempest. This triple switch is to control patches on the Specular Tempest. I can also run this board in stereo out of the Tempest, running into 2 amps. which sounds spectacular. So I really use this board when I want to dial in dirt sounds, everything from fuzz to, you know, rockin', bluesy tones to really heavy killer distortion. I wanted all of the flavors of distortion on this one board. So this is the new version of the board that you might have seen in my 50 Shades of Gain. Now you might be asking, why is there modulation and compression and delay and reverb on this board? I put those pedals on because I do spend a bit of time just messing around with this board and jamming at home. And if I'm recording with it, I don't want to have to pull out separate reverb and modulation type things. If I need just a little bit of something, I've got it here all ready to go on this board. This board is called Julio for no particular reason. My next board here is my really weird, super strange board that does a lot of keyboard, looping, delay. We'll go through the chain on this board. This board's nickname / code name is Gracie. This board also has a custom input-output box at the back of it, made by my friend Jamie at 32 Pedalboards. The guitar plugs in at the back and the outputs are there. From there it goes to this one control looper here. Please pardon the dog hair. There's 3 loops on this, which we'll get through. You'll see 4 buttons. That one's for a mute / tuner out. Signal comes in and goes through my, what I call my keyboard pedal chain, which starts with this little guy, goes through these, and then back into the loop. So that's loop number 1, I believe. From there, loop 2 comes in, and that's this box way up here in the corner. This device is really cool. I can plug in an XLR mic over here and start taking in signals from the microphone and running them through the rest of my loop, which gets pretty crazy. So that device is on loop 2. And that's, I'll give them a shout out. That's the Templo Devices Splice. Really cool machine. And it's got a boost and EQ. So you can run your guitar signal and a mic signal through at the same time, which is cool for catching samples and bird sounds and things like that. Because what happened next in my chain here is I run it through loop 3, which consists of all this really cool, crazy stuff. Zoya, particle, microcosm, and I think I closed the loop at that point. After that, I'm basically going into the Minim, Ranger FX Echo X, the new version, into the blooper, into the Ditto looper. As far as MIDI control, still using the DMC Micro Pro. That's controlling the Enzo, the Zoya, the microcosm, and the blooper. This board runs strictly in mono, unfortunately. But really, it's its own musical instrument. I use it to do a lot of looping and sampling, work with a lot of textures. The Zoya itself is an impressive device on here. This guy up in the corner that does a lot of different things. So I spend quite a bit of time with this board, recording and just experimenting, just having fun with sounds. I do plan on using it live one day. It is fully functional live, and it does sound incredible. I just wish it wasn't stereo, but I didn't plan it out that way out. Now this last board is a work in progress. I'm just waiting for another device to come in there, which is an actual wet dry wet box that's coming from Goodwood Audio, all the way from Australia apparently. But this board here is strictly for home use. Again, this board will allow me to split my signal either stereo, wet dry, or wet dry wet, using my different amplifiers here. Essentially, my signal chain for this one's a little bit complicated. But in a nutshell, my signal will come in here and go through this distortion pedal, just for laughs because I like it so much. I have a Fender style preamp pedal here. The 2 notes look clean. I have the Kingsley Constable, which is basically very Marshally type preamp. I have the JHS color box here, which is a Neve console type sound that you can get. From there it runs back into the wet dry box from there, and then splits into stereo. And I'll be going stereo into the Volante, the Halo, the Plethora, which has cab sims in it, and then into a Boss EQ 200. Out from there, back into the future wet dry wet box that has 3 outputs that will go out to either 1 amp, 2 amps, or 3 amps. Stereo, wet dry wet if you have the 3 amps. So chances are probably pretty low that I'll get a chance to use the wet dry wet board, codenamed Frolander, in a live context. Stage space is small. I'd have to bring 2 amps, but it is ideal for recording at home and messing about in a wet dry wet environment. It's actually a heck of a lot of fun, and I do like it more than just a stereo setup. So that's been a tour of my pedal boards there. I hope you enjoyed the little walkthrough. Yeah, it's a little bit crazy in terms of how many pedals I have, but I hope you can see that they all do different things. Because for some reason I need your validation and I need to feel good about myself. I'll play you guys out with some samples and just some noises from Julio and Gracie, which I have hooked up right now. I'd love to hear your comments. If you like this kind of content, please consider liking and subscribing. You guys take care. Denskill out. Check 1, 2. 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 Check 1, 2.